Well, today brings the conclusion to the series interview with Robin Foy, the founder and amazing author of the Scole Experiment. And if you haven't yet purchased any of Robin Foy's books, look for In the Pursuit of Physical Mediumship, which can be bought from Amazon, and I'm sure they even have these for sale on eBay. It is one that I've yet to read, so I haven't yet got around to reading this. One thing with Robin's books, they are very hard to put down once you start reading. Secondly, the Witnessing the Impossible, which is also by Robin Foy, and you can buy that from the website that I will show in the link below. It is incredible. This actually talks about the Scole experiment, how everything manifested during that time, the experiences, the personal trials and tribulations, if you will, and also when Scole finished. So it is quite a remarkable book and very detailed. This is a hard copy that I have. I don't know whether they come in soft copy, but this one is a hard copy, and it's got some really fascinating things in there. It was very hard to put down, I must say. And of course, the Scole Experiment, which is actually by Grant and Jane Solomon. This is truly remarkable as well. I had read this with such enthusiasm, I guess you could say. When I first came out, I was like, oh wow, this is just amazing. There are photos in here as well. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Now look at this. These are some real images from the experiments that were conducted at Scole. Brilliant. And of course, you've probably seen there is the afterlife investigations, which was actually what many people will know Scole by, because this has scientifically proven there is an afterlife, and there were scientists who were skeptics who had no answer or logical explanation as to how some of these events that took place during their time with the group at Scole, they just couldn't put into words how they did anything. Then they even went as far as using Velcro bands on them and having, so much that they went through to the point where they even sat with their nose pretty much glued on a Pyrex dish, watching a crystal dematerialize and rematerialize. Absolutely remarkable. So it is really exciting for me to have conducted these interviews with Robin Foy, a very humble person, as you will find through this interview and the previous interviews with him. And they are working towards getting a centre together in Spain. And as I have on this side, I will put the information where you can actually become a member, and you can be helping, like with putting this centre together, and it's going to benefit you as well. So it's not just, sending a donation off or anything like that, and that's the last you hear of it. There is an opportunity that's awaiting all of us through this amazing centre that's about to be put into effect for physical mediumship, and of course the Spiritual Science Foundation. It's an exciting thing to be a part of. So if you haven't yet seen the previous episodes of my interview with Robin Foy, I do welcome you to have a look at those, because they are in order of sequence of questions. And I did sort of overwhelm him a little with some of the questions, but tried to keep it to a point where he was able to answer those comfortably without feeling pressured in any way. So thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoy the last of my 3 interviews with the infamous Robin Foy. Welcome back, and thank you again for coming through and communicating with me today based on your wonderful experiences. And I've got something to show you, by the way.
Ah,
I've got
interesting.
this.
Ah, you've got it.
I found this.
Oh, fantastic.
I've
Yes.
had this for quite a while, actually, but I put it away in a box and I said, guides, be with me. Help me find that Scole Experiment book, and
Ah,
found it. And then, of course,
the
there.
one we've just got now, sort of the Scole in pursuit. That thing in hardback now is selling at ridiculous prices. There weren't all that many printed in hardback,
Wow.
but people are selling them for about $400 or $500.
Wow, really? Well, this is not a hardback, but
No,
I've
no, it's
started to
paperback.
read
Yeah.
part of it. And I'll tell you what, everyone who's watching this right now, Robin was quite a bit of a looker in his day. Let me show you, ladies, what you've missed out on. Now, I don't know whether you can see him. Look at that. We
Pilot
would
officer
call,
boy, that's it.
yes,
Yeah.
we would call that a spunk in our language. Some of the wonderful things in here, because I had to have a browse because of the fact that I was, busy with readings and everything.
Of
But
course.
I have to sit down and read it. That you can't just sort of like with your books, I have found that you can't just pick it up and read a little bit and then put it aside, because
Yeah.
you've got to keep on reading it, because to get that feeling and to be submersed in the moment, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But
Absolutely.
honestly, you need to get more out, more books together. And I actually have a feeling, Robin, that there's going to be another one once this is up. Once
Well,
you've got
I think you're right. Actually, during Scole, Emily Bradshaw stated quite categorically to me, there will be a third book.
definitely, I feel it. I just feel like you can't stop at two. This you've got
That's
to
right.
keep. You've got to go for the Trinity number. So
Well, we'll be all right with that once we manage to get this centre up and running down in Antikythera. We've got to sort of finish the book with what happens there.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, get the money together, get the place bought, and we'll be in there hopefully middle of next year.
Fantastic. Now, have you had any people contact you as a result of the previous?
Had quite a few actually, and we've already taken sort of I think 3 or 4 new members in just this
Oh,
week. So excellent.
that's wonderful. Well, let's hope that we can get more, because the more that this is shared as well, and we do encourage everybody to share the video, put it on Twitter, put it on, wherever, even in your own personal websites or Facebook pages, get it out
Yeah.
there so that people are aware of this. This is a fantastic opportunity to be a part of something fantastic. It's a organisation that is purely focused on bringing physical mediumship to the multitude, and
Absolutely.
to also allow people to be a part of, going there at some stage themselves and enjoying what spirit has to bring forward. So this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's not just, oh, let's raise some money and get this property together. This is something really life changing.
Yeah, well, I mean, our job. I mean, we've already been told by Spirit that it's basically our swan song, but our job is really to get this place up and running, and install the sort of physical mediums in there that will be able to demonstrate on a regular basis. And Uwe and Beate Siegert, our German friends, Uwe is a very, very good physical medium. Will be moving to Antikythera same time as us, so. He will be demonstrating there on a regular basis. And of course, our vice president, Kai Muga, is probably the best known ectoplasmic based physical medium who's demonstrating to the public in the world today.
Yep, I actually shared some of his footage in the previous video that we did. So
Right.
it's quite exciting. And I love to, incorporate some of that so that people have an idea of what it is that you're talking about as well.
I thought you
Now,
did that very well. Yeah.
yeah, and it's quite mind blowing. I don't know whether you saw. I did a video recently where I I attempted to do the spirit, asking them to come through, use my face as a
Yeah.
way of showing themselves. And the first attempt was, it was miserable. And I really think it was because I wasn't really concentrating. It was sort of like experimenting. And then because I had done this once before, and I had things appearing on my face that weren't on my face. Like I had a black mole appear. I had, like a man's face appear and everything. And it sort of like took me back, because I worried at one point that, am I inviting something more? Because I didn't have anyone sitting with me. It was just myself. And as you know, sometimes that can be dangerous.
Indeed, yeah.
So what I did this time, I just asked my guides, and I asked, Holy Spirit, that if there is any chance then that they could make this possible, that they show that. And there were.
Yeah.
And I only sat for like 1.5 minutes. I thought that's plenty of time. If Spirit's really wanting to do something, or they're going to work with me, they're going to do it in that time. And
Indeed, yeah.
then to see it, it was, so I'm pretty much hooked, I guess you could say, to do it again. But of course, I'm not going to just, sit down and just ask. I'm going to ask my guide to give me the feeling that it's right. That she's going to be with me through it, because it was pretty intense, even if it was for only over a minute.
Yes, indeed.
It really did sort of like, I could feel like a shift within my spirit, my own spirit, like I could feel it. So let's go on with our questions. We're actually up to number 21, so we're getting there.
Right.
Now, is there anything that you feel was ever misconstrued by others?
Basically, there was an awful lot that was misconstrued by others, because it's rather like the Chinese whispers game. Whereas, you're all sitting in a circle, and one person will tell a little story or what have you, just a few words, and pass it on to the next one. When it gets round to the end of the circle, the story is totally changed. And that's what happens when people relate by word of mouth what they witnessed at Scole, or what they feel they witnessed at Scole, or what they feel they ought to have witnessed at Scole, and that gets misconstrued along the line. And it ends up with the arch skeptics, guys who basically would sell their soul to to make sure that whatever's happening is not true. And these guys sort of put out the stories. So, it's impossible to stop that happening. Whereas a few of the people that are really, really involved in it, and really keen on the subject, immediately they've had their sitting, and they sit down at home and they write a report on it as quickly as they can, to try and get in as much of the truth as possible. And so most of the reports that were written by people who visited us at Scole, and eyewitness reports, were absolutely 100% correct. But then those people, who weren't involved at all, but who read a bit of the story, start to add bits and subtract bits, and you end up with a totally different story.
Right. Is there anything that you want to put straight whilst we've got an
not really. When we sort of started doing the work with the SPR guys, I think we now accept that they were 100% into it from a scientific point of view. So when they were doing things which we thought at the time were disrespectful to the spirit team, we tended to be less kind to them with their sittings, in not giving them so many sittings. But really now we understand that when they went back to the SPR and told their stories, the arch skeptics got involved and started saying, but this might have happened, that might have happened, and trying to turn the whole thing around. So in a way, we had to sort of get used to that. And now we understand they were only really doing their job, but they did it well. And the book that they got, or they wrote, which was the Scole Report, which is still available from the SPR, was a very, very scientific view of it, but it was the only one for many, many years from the SPR that was actually written in a way that they believed 100% that everything they'd witnessed was genuine. Most of the people involved in the SPR are anti-physical mediumship, but these guys said what they saw and put forward all the right arguments, and it came out as a very positive book.
Yeah, and even on the afterlife investigations,
Yeah,
on that video, they actually did say that it was amazing. It was, they said there is no way that we could say that that was fake. We sat there and we saw everything, beginning
absolutely.
to end. And also the fact that you had to wear the tags on your hand, the
Yes,
Velcro
yeah.
tags, so that if anyone were to be, removing the tag to do something, they would have heard the Velcro tearing.
Yeah, they would indeed. Yeah, yeah.
Yep, brilliant. Now, did you or Sandra ever experience I don't know whether I've said this already, out of body experiences which you may have felt were linked to the experiences of Scole?
Yes, I think Sandra was more well, she was more mediumistic herself than I was, and she had on several occasions she had out of body experiences, which were linked to Scole, and one of them, it might be in one of the books, I can't remember, but she actually felt that she was sort of in a car with four of us, and we were going abroad to do a demonstration, and along the way there was a royal funeral going on, and it turned out that eventually this actually came to pass. We were going abroad into the continent, into Holland, to do a demonstration over there, and then on into Germany. And on the ferry, there was a 4-minute silence because it was actually Princess Diana's funeral.
Oh,
And
wow.
Sandra felt that so that the funeral she was watching, the royal funeral, was abroad, but in fact it referred to Princess Diana's funeral. And it came to pass, and there were four of us in a car, the whole Scole group, going abroad to do these demonstrations.
Well, that's really uncanny because of the fact that, she's actually had this opportunity to see this in advance, in a mediumship level, not just a psychic level, but also a mediumship level, because of the way that she's been able to be a part of it and re-experience it over again. It prepared her. I think everyone can think back to that day the announcement was made, where they were at the time, because it really had an incredible impact on the world. And
it did indeed. And I mean, when we were on the sort of on the ferry boat, as I say, they stopped the ferry boat for the sort of for the 4-minute silence, and there were quite a lot of military people on board there, so they were all standing to attention. I mean, it was quite amazing.
Yeah, that just shows the impact Lady Diana had, universal.
Indeed, yes, yeah.
So that is, like I've had my experience. I can remember I only knew about Lady Diana in the fact that she was the princess, and I think she was a school teacher, but apart from that I knew nothing. And when I had this paper interview me, asking me about the royal family and predictions of who's going to be prime minister for the next year, in the coming election, it was so weird. The images that I got, I wrote them down and they put them into the thing, into the paper, but they weren't like, because I asked Spirit not to shock me or scare me or anything like that. They showed me like little bits and pieces of things. And the weird thing was, they showed me Prince Charles standing on an island. And I thought, oh, he must be going to an island. So I wrote Prince Charles, going to an island or something. And then I saw there was like an attack, like someone pushing Lady Di. And I said she'll be attacked in public. Well, it ended up she was, if you want to call it, attacked in public. And there was something about, writing her memoirs or putting her memoirs out. Who actually did that was her, what was it, Paul Burrell, put her memoirs out. And he contacted me, Paul Burrell. And
Right.
I did like a quick session because the group asked for that. And I heard Lady Di's voice come through saying,
Yes.
tell Paul I love him. And the weird thing was when I got the message back to him, he said that he's been feeling that she's been around him. And there was also the warning about Harry.
Yeah.
Something about Harry taking a plane or something, or, you know, something happening with Harry. It ended up straight after that, Harry left the royal family. You
Yes,
know,
indeed. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
all these little things that are just like glimpses, but to have that kind of out of body experience and witness something so tremendous like that, that would have been like mind blowing, especially
Yeah.
seeing that unfold as well. Because it's one thing to have an out of body experience, because that adrenaline that you get, you know, like knowing that you're out of your body and you're just repeating over and over, I want to move forward, I want to move forward, and you're moving forward. It is just incredible. The
That's it. Well, that's it. Yes. Yeah.
it is. It's amazing. Now, loved ones. Whilst it's not uncommon for me to see my loved ones visit, I believe you also had the encounters with your loved ones. Would you be so
Yes.
kind to share your first time that you had this and how did it change, if
Well,
anything, your
it was
perspective?
absolutely close to my birthday, and we had sort of my mother and my father and my sister, who was a stillbirth. They were all there together, and they were all standing by me, quite solid. And you know, we had a long chat, and it was quite fantastic. And of course, you don't forget your parents' voices, and it was their voices speaking to me. And of course, I never met my sister. As I say, she was a stillbirth. But nevertheless, I was aware, and she referred to herself as Frederica. And my grandfather was called Fred. Of course, she was never christened, as she was a stillbirth. But nevertheless, she'd adopted this name Frederica, which was after my grandfather.
Oh, how
And
beautiful.
I knew that years ago because I'd got that on EVP. So it was all very, very fascinating, very loving. And our team at Scole brought our own parents on a number of occasions and our own kith and kin, purely and simply to show us that they were 100% genuine, and they were bringing us connections that we would know intimately
Yeah,
and be thankful for.
that's beautiful. And do you feel like that changed your perspective on death the first time it
No,
happened?
because I'd already reached that level
Oh,
where I had no, no compunction that we live on after we die anyway.
yeah.
But it was a step forward for me because it was the first time I'd ever had the opportunity of literally being in touch with my parents and my sister.
Now, there is one question I've got talking about EVP.
Yeah.
Um, do you have a theory as to how spirit can create their imprint on one recorder and not another?
Um, I I have to say that my own belief is that they can use any recorder
Hmm.
and not just one recorder or another. It happens to do with the person that's using it and the person that's trying.
Hmm.
And I found after many, many years of research, right in the beginning with EVP, which I was doing, for a while, I was actually acting as a navigator for locum doctors around Birmingham in the UK as a second job. And I would sort of sit listening to the radio to see if there were any calls for that doctor while he was in with a patient. And I would sit for 15 minutes and actually record on a cassette tape and got the most fantastic results. Because
Hmm.
that was in the very early days of my being involved in this and being involved in a physical circle. But the leader of that original physical circle, Elmer Brown, had himself been involved for many years in trying to do experiments with EVP. Sometimes he'd stay up all night doing it, so he was hooked on that. And for a little joke, once we had a bit of a competition to see who could get the most EVP voices in 5 minutes. And I think that I actually beat him by one or two. And I think both of us had something in the region of 30 or 40 voices in 5 minutes.
And they tend to sometimes come through and talk very quickly. But what I was meaning is, you know how one person could be beside each other, two
Yeah,
people next to each other, and they've both got a recorder, and only one voice will come through on one person's recorder, and the other
yeah,
person may not get
that's
it.
quite true, and it's down to a form of mediumship,
Mm,
because EVP does need a mild form of physical mediumship for it to happen. And if you are getting it yourself, and if you give a sort of tuition at all on the EVP, you can actually get everybody in the room to get it. And I've actually done that in a workshop where I had about 30 people present, and all of them had their own recorders. And how it was done was that I actually handled their recorder personally, and then let them get on with it themselves. And everybody out of the 30 eventually got it. So you can actually catch EVP like you can a common cold. So if you're working with people that want to get EVP and you've got it yourself, if you handle their recording device, the likelihood is that after that they will be able to get EVP.
Well, that explains a lot, just like that, because I had a lady that when I had the office, I was doing her reading and her mother was talking to me, and she was
Yeah,
like, "Oh, look, I'm sorry, but I don't believe you're talking to my mother." And I said, "Would you prefer she say something to you?" You know,
yeah,
like, because I agree in some part, you know, that it's one thing to be told by somebody that they're saying this and that, but to hear it physically yourself is a very different thing. So
that's right.
I I said, "Have you got a mobile phone on you?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, put it down and set up the thing, and I'll press play, like the
Yeah,
record thing, so that your mother, you know, when she says that she's ready to say something, I'll press record and you'll be able to hear her." So
yeah,
I said to her mother, "Is that okay? Because your daughter is obviously skeptic." Which is healthy, you know, it's healthy to have a
yeah, yeah,
skeptic
yeah.
attitude because then you're not gullible for every single thing being,
That's right.
you know.
Yes.
And so I pressed record, and her mother said, "I love you."
Hmm.
Very, very clear. I heard
Good.
it. She didn't hear her saying it at the time. And when I stopped it and played it back, she heard her mother's voice.
Yeah,
And so she said that she had tried to, you know, that kind of thing, record. She said, "I never got anything."
yeah,
And I said, "Well, you saw I wasn't saying anything." And she said, "No, you didn't," because she said, "That is my mother's voice." She
yes,
said, "No
yeah,
one can recreate my mother's voice unless they know my mother."
yeah.
And that was her voice. And she was beside herself. She said, I can't believe it." She said, "I'm going to treasure this forever." Just those 3 words, "I love you."
And it's the simple things really that do the trick in people understanding the reality of it all.
Now, in regards of ITC, which is instrumental transcommunication, I've
Yeah,
had some remarkable experiences in regards of, you know, like just a simple cup. You know, some people get these big containers of water and stuff like that. I just use a simple cup and I can still get faces appear. Um,
yeah.
have you had anything similar with, have you used the water or smoke or anything like that?
No, no, we've always stuck to our sort of pattern
Okay.
that we understand to get our own results. We have had phone calls from spirit. In fact, on one occasion, and that was quite evidential. Sandra and I had gone back to my parents' home. We lived at that time 150 miles away, but my mother had already passed, and my father was in the process. He was in the hospital. We went to see him, and he wasn't doing very well at all. And we went back to the house to phone Sandra's daughter to sort of say, well, you know, sort of we're here, and we're just backwards and forwards to the hospital. And so she phoned her daughter, and right in the middle of the conversation, the phone simply went dead, and a lady's voice came on and said, "We're just waiting for the passing." Uh,
Wow.
and uh, and obviously, you know, so when we went back to the hotel, to the hospital, he died. So you know, it's sort of she was really, that lady in spirit was telling us, you know, he's on his way. there's all sorts of different voices that communicate
Mm.
via ITC. Some are sort of very whispered voices.
Yeah.
Some seem very much like child's voices.
Mm.
Some voices are very faint. Some are very loud.
Mm.
And some voices that you get on there can sound robotic.
Yes.
In other words, I am, so, and that sort of fashion. So I do believe that some of the voices you get on there are perhaps from ETs, because it's quite obvious now, as we're all getting into the 21st century, that ETs are getting involved in psychic work.
Mm.
They are joining together with the spirit world, really, to sort of be in touch with all of us. And sort of, so there are all sorts of different voices that you get through ITC. Some can be fast,
Mm-hmm.
some can be very slow, some can be mournful, some can sound happy. It's all sorts of different voices, and you can't always say exactly what type of voice you'll get.
That's right, until it comes through. But
Yeah.
another thing on that, on like EVPs and ITC voices, have you noted? Oh, some people have this thing about reversing the voice. I personally, I mean, because my spirit, resident spirit, Chris, I said to him, when people reverse the voice, is that correct? Like, do you? And he said, do you talk backwards? And I said, no. He said, what makes you think we will? If we've got something to say, we're going to talk to you in our own like forward voice. Like, why would you want to reverse? And he made a very good point, because there've been so many people, they will get some type of voice and then they reverse it.
Yeah, it's just not logical.
No.
I think you've got to stay logical with it.
Exactly.
And I mean, I agree entirely with your own spirit. Basically, just take what you get, and use it as you can.
That's it. That's what he said. He said, and he said also, because I asked him also about the orbs, different coloured orbs. You know how these people say blue ones are angels, red ones are angry, black ones are demons. And he said, we're not mood rings. He said, we don't change colour depending on our mood. We just, use the energy around us to appear. And he said, whatever the energy is in the environment we are in is how we're going to show ourselves. So do you agree with him on that? Or?
Yeah, I do. I agree entirely. I really sort of throw everything over to spirit, to sort of be the controllers of everything. And I mean, the thing is, they will contact you in the way they want to contact you.
Yeah.
And I think if you take it as you hear it, and as you perceive it, that's how it's meant to be.
Yeah.
And if you start playing around with it, doing this or that or the other, and trying to make something different out of it, it's not logical at all to think that way.
And from what Chris said, it's insulting, because they might be saying something else, and then reversing it completely changes the whole concept of the message.
Yes.
Do you still have contact with the spirit team who shared photos with you?
Well, what you have to understand about a spirit team is that it's very large.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a spirit team. At Scole, we were made to understand that our spirit team probably contained about 250 spirit personalities, but they all have little departments. So you had a department that was involved in bringing psychic photography. You had a department that was involved in giving us independent voices. You had a department that was involved in giving us spirit lights. So each thing that was done, there was a little department within your spirit team that were involved in achieving that. So to say, did we still have contact with spirit people who'd been involved in that team? I think the answer is yes, because they don't leave your spirit team. But having said that, we've not had spirit photography of the type that we got at Scole ever since Scole. So I do think they might still be within the team that works with us. But we're now led to understand that the team that we've built up over the years does contain very, very dear souls that were working with us at Scole, but also contains extra people that brought in for extra things and extra different types of phenomena. We now understand that you're talking about maybe 1,000 people in the spirit team that we have. But again, each and every one of them is in a little clique of their own, doing one particular job or another particular job. So in the main communicators that we had at Scole, I can say that yes, we have had contact with them since Scole, particularly when we came over here to Spain and we had the physical mediums from Glasgow, Tom and Linda Anderson, come and stay with us, because we got independent voice during the 5 sittings we had with them, 3 in Spain and 2 in France. On each occasion, we had our spirit communicators from Scole speaking to us in exactly the voices that they'd used at Scole. And yet Tom and Linda Anderson had never heard any of our spirit communicators before. So they weren't to know that the voices were exactly the same as those that we'd had previously. But obviously, what I'm saying is that a lot of those major contributors to Scole from the spirit side of life are still with us and still working with us.
And when you start this new organisation that you're setting up, it is going to be, I feel like when you hear those familiar voices again, you're going to get emotional. No doubt.
Got to do that, because I mean, these people, remember, when we had Scole, they were just like really, really loved family to us.
Yeah.
We spoke to them for hours on end during sittings, and they really did become just as dear to us as any of our close family.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you're absolutely right. We hear those voices again, you do get very, very emotional.
I know that it was once a spirit that I hadn't spoken to for so many years, and to be honest, I had forgotten about them. And one night there, I was lying in bed. I was restless, so restless I couldn't sleep, and I heard that familiar voice, and I sat up, and the tears, it was just like I couldn't hold back, because it was like, oh my God, they're here. And I had completely forgotten all about them. And all they said was, hi, it's me, remember me? And just that connection was like an old friend coming back, and it was amazing. So I can imagine how it's going to be when you have...
I really think there's some fantastic times ahead. When we actually get this centre open, I think we're going to have people coming from all over the world, because we want to use it as an international hub for physical mediumship in all different sorts, but that will involve people from all over the world and not just Spain, not just Europe. It's going to be a thing for people who are really into physical mediumship in the 2 different ways. And who knows, by the time we get that place open, there might be a 3rd way, not just energy based and not just ectoplasm based, but possibly a 3rd way.
Exactly. Everything is evolving, especially with spirit. It just doesn't stop. And I actually get a feeling that you're going to be doing like link ups, not just, having it based in there. I get this vision in my mind that you're going to have like either a telecast or some type of, where people can be like anywhere in the world, and they can have this link up to be able to be a part of that experience. And
I think that'll happen.
That was a dream that I had about 2 weeks ago, and I had been meaning to talk to you about it, but I thought everything just sidetracked me. But it was so vivid. I'm thinking, I've got to get ready for this telecast, and in the back of my mind, the logic is taking over. Like, what telecast are you talking about? And it was like my spirit was saying to me, "You've got to get ready for this telecast."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, is it the interview with Robin? Because I could hear your name, but it wasn't to do with this. It was to do with the organisation.
The actual Spiritual Science Foundation has been running for about 4 years now, and I found it after I had a very, very good reading with a wonderful medium, Sandy Ingham, who is also a psychic artist. And she basically brought through some very, very evidential information from spirit contacts that we knew, and basically said, get on, get it done, get on with it. And we started it then, and it's taken a while really catching on here or there, but I think now people are becoming aware of it. So it is the Spiritual Science Foundation. When when that started, we didn't know by then which centre, or which the actual centre that we need to buy, which was actually, this was all predicted by Spirit in 2007, and the fact that this was going to be in Antiquera. They gave us 25 clues. They didn't tell us the actual place. So we've been spending years looking around Antiquera to try and find a suitable property. And what we didn't realise was that the actual property was the one that we'd had our very first meal in as a restaurant, the very first time we went to Antiquera. And Sandra's mother had, from Spirit, had given her a clue from a message at that time saying, look out for the goats with the bells. Well, we had our meal in this restaurant, and I was sitting with my back to the window. Sandra was sitting facing the window. And all of a sudden she said, oh my God. And I spun round, and there's hundreds of goats with bells on coming down the hill towards the restaurant. And
Wow.
what Sandra's mum was trying to tell us, and we didn't catch on to it for several years, was the fact that where we were sitting in that restaurant was going to be the actual centre.
Fantastic. So this is, again, you know, the communication is always there. And that's
right,
another thing that people need to realise, even in their everyday life. You know, we're always getting signs, always around us. And I've had people, you know, saying, can you tell my mother this? Can you tell? No, you can tell them that, because they're there. They're listening to us all the time. They're very hands-on, and all we need is people to open up. We need people to just, you know, embrace it and not question it, you know, because when we question it too much, we lose that. We lose that.
That's right. You've got to take it as a simple message and sort of interpret it if you have to. But basically, they are trying to tell us as easily as they can that this is the simple message.
Exactly.
So you know, we just get on with it from there.
That's right. Now, have you ever encountered a doppelganger?
No, never.
Oh, okay. I have. That was freaky, because, you know, I was lying in bed and I felt something move beside me, and I thought it was one of the cats. So I turned, only to see this, like, the way I can describe it is like a translucent imprint. And I had my laptop in my room with me because it was doing an update. And of course, you had that screen, you know, that's bright as anything. So I had my back to it. And when I turned, I see this imprint of myself sitting there just staring at the monitor. And I was taken aback, and I went to reach out to touch myself, if you can understand that. And as soon as I did, I mean, they didn't look at me, but they just dissipated. That's the only time, the first ever time, that I've seen what I can call a doppelganger. But my daughter has actually said, you know, that there was one time there, she said, what were you doing in my room? And I said, I wasn't even in your room. She said, yes, you were. You were fumbling around looking for something. And what were you looking for? And I said, what have you got to hide? And she said, nothing. I said, look, I tell you, I wasn't in your room. She said, I could have sworn you were in my room.
Well, this can happen during your sleep, of course. You know, sort of quite easily. During your normal sleep, you could be elsewhere and could be seeing whilst you're elsewhere.
Yeah, no, this was daytime. I wasn't even home. I'd come in the door, and she said, what were you doing in my room? I said, what are you talking about? I wasn't in your room. You know, because I just got in with shopping in my hand. So she was, you know, you were in my room. I saw you in my room. You just ignored me. And the weird thing was, I wasn't wearing, she said, what I had on. I was wearing something else. I said, either I'm a fantastic changer, you know, or, you know, why didn't they ask, you know, to do the housework or something? That'll help me.
Spooky. Yeah,
Now,
spooky.
we're almost to the end of our questions.
Yeah.
Now, you have long since moved from Scole. Do you have any regrets?
No. We had 15 of, I think, probably the very best years of our lives at Scole. It was a beautiful place. We were very lucky. We had a beautiful house.
No, I mean, do you have any regrets moving?
No, not at all. I mean, we never moved back to the UK. We're settled in Spain. All I want to do before we sort of leave the world and go back again to spirit, is to get down there and open that centre. That's the most important thing to us. Once we've opened it, I've spent my life opening different things and starting different things, mainly to do with spirit. But once you've got it started and you've got a good team in place there, it's self-sufficing. Then you don't. They can carry on forever. But we're just very, very happy to be involved, and I think our happiness will be complete if we can get this place and open it.
So, having set up the Spiritual Science Foundation, how can people become a part of it? And what is your future focus on this, apart from what you've already told?
Well, if people go to the website, I've just given you there
which is www.s for Sam, S for Sam, F for Fred, Robin Foy.com. So
that's it. You'll find on there, it tells you exactly how you can join the foundation, and tells you a lot of stuff about the foundation, how it started. There's a little sort of bio on there about us.
Beautiful. And of course, if you watch our previous videos, we'll be able to show you all the other parts of, like books that you can buy, be a part of, receiving information and so on from Robin and his team. And finally, can you believe we've come to question 32? And we're doing pretty good on the time here. Have you any new encounters or experiences that you can share with us?
Basically, only because at the moment we're not getting phenomena. We had some fantastic spirit lights, anything up to 80, 90, 100 of them at a time, at all our sittings up until January of this year. And there's quite a lot of things going on that were psychic at that time. But I'm absolutely certain it was prior to COVID starting, and spirit were probably trying to sort of get everything in order for this COVID business. So our phenomena stopped at that time, and we're waiting again for it to start again, hopefully when COVID is on the horizon. But we have had this business of our cats being teleported out and teleported back, and that still happens. We still get lots and lots of raps around our apartment here, sort of spirit raps everywhere all the time. And quite frequently we hear sort of knuckles rapping on our outer door about 5 times. We shoot to the door, open it, and there's nobody there. So things are still going on, and we're still having our cats teleported. They disappear and then they reappear sort of sometimes a day or 2 days later.
Wow.
So I think spirit are sort of hoping that will keep us going until we get our proper phenomena back.
So looking forward to getting this centre up and running and seeing you just progress more and bringing this to such a bigger audience than ever before. So this is really going to blow Scole out of the water from what I feel.
I think it will, and of course the film, the big screen film, is still ongoing. I mean, that's going to happen, I'm sure of it. And that's with Hollywood at the moment. But
I have to say, an idea roughly when we expect to see that?
Well, again, I think some of that is down to COVID. I have to say that some of the people in Hollywood, they disappear into a little corner as soon as they hear the word, sort of COVID or what have you.
Oh, he didn't blame
So
them.
I think it's going to be a while before normality comes back to Hollywood. But I do know that the screenplay has actually been produced by Grant and Jane Solomon, and they've written the 17th version, which has now been accepted for a film. So it's doing the rounds.
And it's not going to be over dramatized, is it?
No, it's based on absolute truth, and I think a lot of it is going to involve the little TDC device that we have, that we actually got going. Actually, I will show you that.
Oh,
Got it here.
beautiful.
This is the TDC device. I don't know if you can see it there.
Yeah, look at that.
It's not very well lit, but it's not much bigger than a matchbox.
My goodness.
It's got a couple of coils, and it's it's sort of, if you look at it sideways, you can see it's not very thick and it's not very long. There's a connecting coil here that plugs into, in our case today, a boombox, so that spirit can use the amplifier to talk to us. And one of the things we were getting in our sittings recently was the fact that the spirit would stop the music at a particular point, which was playing on the boombox through an MP3 player. And when they stopped the music, that was an indication to us to plug in this TDC so they could try and talk to us. So we've got this going successfully at Scole. We've now got to get it back. So literally we can hear spirit voices coming out of the boombox, talking to us just as you and I are talking to one another now. Fantastic. That happened at Scole. We hope it'll happen here.
That is awesome. That's so exciting, actually, because to think that you've got this thing that has been given to you through spirit, just to show you how to put it together. I mean, from the actual diagram, it looked like something really long and complex.
Yeah.
And then you look at it.
It's quite simple. Yes. Yeah. And it was Thomas Edison that gave us that blueprint on film. A film which had never actually been in the light, or and it came through, and we built it just as they wanted. And eventually, about 6 months later, he was able to speak to us for 15 minutes. Thomas Edison. We've still got the recording somewhere.
Wow, that would have been absolutely phenomenal. To hear his voice on something that he was putting together, and it would have been a very proud moment for him too, to know that.
Oh, it was, yeah.
To something that you have actually listened to his instructions about and followed to the letter. That would have been such a wonderful thing for him. It's like fulfilling a chapter that he couldn't fulfill here.
Yeah, that's quite right, because he was intending to try and build a machine to talk to spirit. Yeah.
Because he was very inquisitive, and to see that, oh my goodness, it's just you holding that. It's like a testament to the fact that his work is still continuing from the other side, here. It's amazing. It really is. Well, look, I appreciate the time that you've given. Has been absolutely amazing, to spend this quality time with you, discussing your own experiences. It just reaffirms the things that are going on in the world, the things that are happening even in my life as a medium, and the things that I see. It's refreshing to me, because there's so much that I still, in some way, I question some of the things that I get. I think, that sounds silly. I'm not going to repeat that, but there's always, it comes back to, there's a reason for everything.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yes. Yeah. But I've enjoyed it, sort of 3 interviews, and it's gone very well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's been lovely. And I love the fact that you're just, there's nothing that you won't talk about. You haven't held back. You've been very forward coming with your information, and I appreciate that, because I know that there are some things that, you know, you don't want to be spilling the beans about until it's ready to go into this thing. So I've tried to tippy toe around a lot of things, obviously. I'm dying to know more, but I'm sure that this won't be our last communication together.
No, absolutely not. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
really look forward to seeing this all up and running. And as I said, I do see you having some type of live stream type of setup once this is live, so that people aren't
Yeah.
feeling like, I can't afford to go to Spain, or, you know,
Yes.
I can't leave my
Yeah.
home because of, for whatever reason. They've
Yeah.
still got the opportunity of being some, you know, a part of this amazing experience. And you should feel so honored to be chosen in some way by the other side to put this
Just
forward.
doing our job. That's the way we look at it.
You're very
We came
humble.
back here, we volunteered to come back here at this time to get all this stuff done, to get it started, to
Yeah,
get it moving. And so really that's all we've done. We're just all we need now is to get this centre open, and
yeah.
that'll really top the whole thing.
You're so humble. You're very humble, I've got to tell you. But you know, everyone, please be a part of it. It's only, you know, a small amount every year. What was that again? €20.
20 euros per year, that's all, yes.
That's it.
And
And
for
you
that,
see,
anybody that sort of joins is entitled to email me anytime as a member with any questions about physical mediumship, whether they want advice for their own circle or what. They'll get that free. But I can't do it for anybody that isn't a member of the organisation.
absolutely. And for €20 a year, it's nothing. It really isn't.
You
In
cup of coffee.
comparison,
Yeah.
yeah. And of course, you know, you once you've got this certain number of members, you probably would be sort of like limiting that to a certain degree. Once
Not
you've got all
really, no. I mean, you know, sort of we'll carry on taking on new members constantly. I
fantastic.
think it's important that we do, and that it spreads to as many people in the world as it possibly can.
That's right. And well, hopefully we can get that all up and going as quickly as possible, because the sooner we can get all this started, or you can get all this started, the benefit, you know,
Yeah,
worldwide is going to help mediums, people who are into spirituality, people who are trying to explore how to connect in some way to their higher self. You know, it's
yes, yeah,
limitless. So, I mean, spirit is all around us, and we take so much for granted. You know, we look at energy, we expect a light to turn on because we've got a globe in there, and that's the same with spirit. As soon as we flick that switch, that
yeah,
will come on. And be prepared for something amazing, because it's going to open your eyes to a lot of things that you've been previously kept in the dark about. You know, I look at spirit also like a helicopter. You know, in a
yeah.
physical form, we can see the blades. But as soon as the helicopter is in the air and those blades are spinning, you don't see how many blades are there. But you
Oh,
know
that's right.
there are
Yeah,
blades
yeah,
there keeping it
yeah,
up. And that's the same with spirit energy. You know,
yeah.
it's there. So I thank you again from the bottom of my heart, Robin, for your time dedicated
You're
to
very
having
welcome. Yeah,
this.
indeed. Yeah.
And I will certainly be looking forward to our next communication in our future.
Okay, Karen. Thanks very
So
much.
give my love to your lovely wife, and you take care, and let's see if we can't get more people joining.
That's lovely. Thank you for your help. Cheers
You're
now.
welcome.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye now.